Good evening and welcome to the RUSD Superintendent's Family and Community Update, Thursday, June 18th. I'm Jacqueline Perez. I'd like to invite Assistant Superintendent Sergio San Martin to provide a welcome in Spanish.
Thank you, Dr. Perez. Muy buenas tardes y bienvenidos. Tenemos una transmisión en vivo por separado para nuestra comunidad de habla hispana. Para unirse y escuchar, sigan el enlace en la parte de abajo de la pantalla. Muchas gracias. Back to you, Dr. Perez.
Thank you, Sergio. I'd like to introduce Board President Kathy Alavey to provide a welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Perez, and welcome to our RUSD Community Update. The topic on most families' minds right now is how and when to open our schools and how to give our families the choice they need. This is exactly what we are trying to do. Last night, the school board discussed this at great length, and after receiving the results of a survey to teachers, parents, and students. Maybe you were one of the 6,000 that turned in that survey. We now have formed a 200-member task force that is delving into all aspects of opening, from the actual walking into a classroom on the first day of school to how to keep campuses as clean as they possibly can be. We are talking about options. Though the majority of respondents wanted to return to a classroom setting, some families will need to continue home distance learning, and some have enjoyed it and want to continue a more flexible educational system. Today, you will hear an update about these very topics and very much more. Thank you for tuning into our update. And now I'd like to introduce Dr. David Hanson, our superintendent.
Thank you, Mrs. Alavey. That was a very nice introduction, and I want to express my gratitude to the school board. They did. Last night, they went from 4 until about 9, discussing most of the time the topic on opening up school, keeping safety first for all students and employees, and being responsive to the needs of the community. So thank you for your leadership on the school board. And I too want to add my gratitude and thanks to the staff for all the many hours that they're doing to help ensure that we can open up school on time with the safety of our students in their mind, as well as our staff members, the behind the scenes staff, the cabinet staff. Thank you very much for all that you do, and then preparing for these regular updates. And I also want to express my gratitude to the parents. Thank you for your patience with us. And to the students, thank you for your patience, your flexibility. We hear you. We appreciate your feedback. And as you've always heard, you can reach out to any one of us, either via email or by phone call. We're happy to spend some time with you. One takeaway I want to provide you this evening is just to know that on the July the 21st board meeting, that's a month away, the board's going to take action and make a decision so that you all know how we're going to be returning to school in August when we do start, because we are starting school still in the first part of August. And so tune into that July the 23rd or 21st board meeting. And then that same week, if you don't catch the board meeting, we're going to repeat that in another community meeting on Thursday, July the 23rd. So a month from now. And I suspect there'll be a few emails and letters that we send out between now and then. So look forward to those 2 dates, July the 21st as well as July the 23rd. Back to you, Dr. Perez.
Thank you, Dr. Hanson. So this evening, we're going to be providing an update on the opening of schools task force and get into some details around the process and how we're organizing that and the work that we'll be undertaking for the month. So I'd like to invite Assistant Superintendent Dr. Ryan Lewis to guide us through that.
Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Perez. If we could go to the next slide, please. I also would like to thank Mrs. Alavey and the Board of Education for the conversation we had last night. A task force has been called for, and we have 6 different action teams that are working to meet our community's needs as we look to the fall and have a reopening plan. So tonight I'd like to provide a brief overview of what those teams, the progress we've made, and at the guidance of our board, where we are headed in planning as we prepare for the fall. So number one, on the slide deck that you see in front of you, we have our 6 teams. I'm going to give a brief overview of those teams as we go through in the meetings that they've had. And then we're also going to talk about the survey results we've received. So if we could head to the next slide. The first team you saw was the health and safety team. This team has been working on the first guiding principle that you'll see around public health guidelines. How do we take what we're hearing from local officials and state officials as we prepare for entering the fall? And that's the first team you're going to hear about. The second guiding principle, we've looked at it from an equity lens. For all members of our community, how do we provide as many safe and possible options to fit our students and families as we prepare for the fall? Third, we talked about communication. You're actually going to hear tonight from Dr. Perez when she talks about her communication team that is working on to notify our community. And last is developing a systematic protocol that all of our teams, we are all headed in one direction, but yet working with over 200 members as we prepare with those 6 action teams. Next slide, please. So where we are in our timeline, we have, last night we provided our board update. Our board provided clear direction for our planning teams going forward, which I'll speak to in a second. And then we are now in the adjust plan. Those teams will continue to meet, leading to the beginning to middle of July at the 21st, where we'll provide our board final recommendations that you heard our superintendent speak to as well. And then we'll be ready to open the school year. We know this 6-week period will go fast, and we know many of you are waiting for those answers. So to start this, if we go ahead to the next slide, the first thing we did is we talked to our community, and we wanted to hear family feedback as well as staff and student feedback. And what we heard was about 64% of our community said they would like to return to school in person, and roughly 31% said they would like to have a virtual model. So last night at our board meeting, when we presented the state of the board, we provided 2 options. While the teaching and learning team that you'll hear an update in a second, we are working on providing both an in-person instructional model, following all those health and safety guidelines that we spoke of. And we're also at the same time working to provide a virtual model. And that virtual model will have several different components for those families and students who choose to take that route. So when we come back to the fall, we'll have those 2 options. A third option we're looking at is, what could we do as a school district to develop some type of homeschool program for families that wanted to pursue that option? So those are the 3 takeaways that we'd like you to hear this evening that our teams are hard at work planning. If we go to the next slide, please. So the 6 action teams are looking at it from 3 ways. 1, what do we need to do immediately? What work needs to happen? And that work is happening at the same time those teams are meeting. The second is, what do we need to do before school opens? Again, those teams are also doing that work. And then after school opens, what needs to occur? And those 3 action plans are being set up for all 3 models you just heard me speak of. So if we can move to the next slide, I will give you a brief review of the 6 action teams. The health and safety team. On the slide, you will see some of the highlights that team is working on. That team has met twice already, and then we'll be meeting again, I believe it's on June 18th, to present. They are the first team to present their findings to all 5 other teams to help lead the work of their health and safety. What does it need to look like when students return to school, when staff returns to school, or when we do have some type of virtual registration option? What do we need to do to make that happen? And you'll see that listed on the health and safety team. We appreciate their work and leadership. The next team talks about teaching and learning. We are setting up 2 different teams. We have 1 team, nearly 40 individuals working on what does it mean to develop a strong, robust virtual environment where we have both synchronous and asynchronous high quality instruction that will be a very different model than how we finished the spring. Then we have another team looking at, for students who return to school with instructional models, how is that going to work? How are we going to work with the health and safety guidelines and welcome our students back safely? The third bullet this team is working on in both of those is developing social emotional supports. We know many of our families and students will come back with varying needs, and we are going to do our very best to support our students and develop plans and prepare teachers to welcome them back to their classrooms. And then lastly, when we talk about co-curricular activities, I will be talking on the next slide about fall sports, and this does also include all of our marching bands and other type of visual and performing large clubs. So if we could head to the next slide, please. So I know this is a question many people have asked me throughout the community. Many people are wondering, and many athletes and student performers are also wondering. So just as a brief update, July 20th, CIF has noted as their date when they will make a decision on what the fall is going to look like. Rest assured, both the National Federation of High School Sports and CIF has worked to develop a return to activity guidelines. They have been created, and we do actively right now have a team working. We talked about that simultaneous group of athletic directors and of coaches and of activities directors talking about what does it look like when we are allowed to return. That is our planning. And if you would like more information from CIF and what they have published, Rob Wygott has done an excellent job communicating. You'll notice the website is on the screen as well. So we will continue to plan. We will update you as that information does evolve with practices and when we're allowed to return to the field or to the performing area. But CIF, as far as a fall sport announcement, that will happen on or before July 20th as the date they've set.
Dr. Lewis, can I interject here?
Yes, sir.
I know that as superintendents, we meet with our county superintendent, Dr. White, every week. And this last week, Dr. Cameron Kaiser, who serves the Board of Supervisors and is our county mental health, we talked about this specific thing. And we have seen on social media, other counties, maybe San Diego or LA, are actually having high school practices right now. And Dr. Kaiser made it clear in Riverside County that that is not part of any decisions that have been made from county supervisors or from the state. And so therefore we are not to hold any kind of youth activities practicing things such as that. Remember, every order is given to different counties. Every county needs to treat them to meet their specific needs. I believe there's 58 counties up and down our state of California, and Riverside County has been hit some of the hardest with what's going on. So our Dr. Kaiser, who is in charge of public health, has made it clear that no practices currently in our county. Now, he also said that, remember, the current orders go through June the 19th, which is this week, and there'll be an update given to us as superintendents, I suspect, at the end of this week or first of next week. And if it changes, we'll let you know. But currently, no practices. CIF will make their decision the same time we're making our decision. They're going to provide on July the 20th, as I shared with you earlier this evening. We're going to give you an update on July the 21st. So I just wanted Dr. Lewis, for the community to know that, and how we're treating high school sports and why we are not practicing like perhaps we see on social media some of the other counties up and down the state are. Back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Hanson. And do rest assured that we have our coaches. We have a subcommittee meeting under the direction of our activities directors and athletic directors, being prepared that if those orders do change and things do become permitted, that our district will be ready to make that change when that does occur. If we could head to the next slide, please. Another action team we have is our personnel team. This is a team that originally had their first meeting on the 15th, and then they will be meeting at the conclusion of the process, because they begin to put all of the different action teams' information into a protocol and in place for the fall. So they'll be meeting again later in the month of June and the beginning of July, working with our associations, working on staffing, any changes that need to happen. If we do have calendar options, this is a team that is looking at that as well as all of risk management that has to do with the health and safety guidelines. So we appreciate their help through this process. The next slide, we'll talk about the operations team. This is led, they have met several times, will continue to meet. We're looking at how we safely will operate our schools, from facilities to school lunches, to common areas, to students who provide transportation, to lastly, to our hardworking staff in nutrition and cleaning and maintenance that will keep, again, those health and safety guidelines to keep our school sanitized and safe for students. And this team will continue to meet. They have different options, again, working on those 3 different models, and they will be meeting through the end of June, all the way through the beginning of July, making sure all of those recommendations are put in place to keep our schools and students safe. And the last committee I'm going to speak to this evening on the next slide is Fiscal and Governance. This team is responsible for, again, guiding all the other teams as we come up with creative ideas, creative solutions, creative opportunities to look at how that impacts our budget and how that impacts budget solutions, as well as looking for what advocacy do we need at both the federal and state levels to support our efforts as we head back to the fall. This team has also met. Thank you for those that are serving under our Chief Business Officer, Maze Kakish, and they will continue to meet through our stabilization process and implementing the ideas that come forward. Again, before I turn it back over to Dr. Perez for communication, I just want to thank all of the 225 teachers and family members and students and staff that are participating and helping us lead these action teams forward. We will continue the work. We will continue to update along the process, and we are anxiously awaiting to come back to our board on July 21st with our opportunities and with a plan of action to open our schools. Thank you, Dr. Perez.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis. So the communications action team, we really are focused on what and how we're communicating out to our staff, families, students, and community. And so I just want to go over a few things that we're really focused on, is making sure that everyone is very well aware that safety and well-being of students and staff are our priority in opening up schools. We're going to follow the necessary state and county guidelines. And as we get more information and the public health situation continues to evolve, we're going to strive to ensure that as we're opening up, we're creating an inclusive learning environment for students and inclusive work environment for our employees. Additionally, as Dr. Lewis shared, we have staff and family that are part of this process. So we value voice in this joint decision-making process. And additionally, we're us being able to provide timely communication to all of our stakeholders. And so this is one avenue in which we're providing updates as well as the board, and we will be sending follow-up emails as well. The next few slides are just some reminders to get us through these next few weeks. Keep in mind, we are still providing meal service through the summer and at the same location, so please utilize this, and it is for our families. If at any point you need any additional social emotional supports, we have resources here. Again, Care Solace has 24/7 support. So if there's ever any need, they are respond immediately and quickly. So please utilize that service, as well as the National Crisis Text Line, as well as our own internal family resources through the RUSD Wellness Virtual Wellness Center. So before we conclude this evening, I'd like to ask President Alavi and Dr. Hansen for any closing comments.
Thank you, Dr. Perez. I was just going to say that I want the public to know how hard everyone is working to consider all aspects about the school reopening, and we're being very thorough. I want to assure everybody that we're looking at every kind of aspect to this that we possibly can, and we look forward to hearing from you and getting your comments, so please feel free to do that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Alavi. And again, thank you, Dr. Perez and the team for, again, all of your work. As you've heard us say, community members, we hear you. Thank you so much for the surveys. We hear that the majority of you want to come back in person. And as you come back, we're going to do our best to follow the guidelines, but recognizing that they're just guidelines. And we'll do what we can to keep the safety of all of our employees and staff at the top as we have you come back, doing our best to follow those guidelines. And then we hear the group of 30% who want to stay virtually. And so we know that we're going to need to enhance what we did the last time. And so the team is working really hard to have a robust virtual program available for those families that aren't ready to come back and want their kids to continue to learn from home. And then, of course, you heard that third option of how do we have an RUSD homeschool that might look a little bit even differently from virtual. And so we hear you, want you to know that. And as Kathy said, the team's working so very hard. And so please tune in on June the 21st. Now, if things need to change between now and June the 21st, we can easily have another community meeting and would send out the emails and the broadcasts and let you know. But June the 21st is the board meeting where they're going to be requested by staff to take formal action. And then we have that community meeting, as you see on your screen. I say June, sorry, it's July, July the 21st. And then, of course, July the 23rd is the community meeting. So again, grateful to you, very grateful to you for your patience, and we'll keep you updated and keep you current with what's going on. That's all we have. I'll send it back to you. Or is that the very end, Dr. Perez?
That is it, Dr. Hansen.
That's the very end. All right, everyone be safe and stay healthy. Bye-bye.